Nathan Sinclair had it all: polished shoes, crisp suits, a penthouse office with a skyline view. He was the kind of man who could close a multi-million-dollar deal before lunch and still have time to brief a board of directors with calm precision. But under that armor of control lived a question he couldn't negotiate away. Why are you still single? It echoed louder than market volatility and boardroom debates. It struck in quieter moments, over clinking wine glasses at family dinners. Each year, the pressure grew heavier. It wasn't from investors or shareholders. It was from grandma's watchful gaze, from cousins pairing off, and from his own gnawing solitude. Nathan could manage mergers, yes, but he couldn't manage the hollow ache that lingered when the house was quiet. And that kind of silence? It's the kind that creeps under your skin. It's what made him start believing that maybe success without love was just performance, a show without applause. He wasn't the kind of man who confessed weakness. No way. But when his family started planning his grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary, Nathan felt cornered. He knew the room would be filled with stories of devotion, of trials endured together, of wrinkles earned with laughter and loss. And what did he have? A stellar resume, a perfectly lonely skyline, a shadow of envy for something he pretended not to need. So he did what any high-functioning adult might do when trapped by emotion. He treated it like a business obstacle. He went into strategy mode. What's the goal? Silence the questions. What's the risk? Emotional exposure. What's the solution? Craft an image they can't question. Not a girlfriend, a wife. Not romance. Optics. Calculated protection wrapped in a smile. He contacted a discreet agency, one that specialized in touchy arrangements. Nathan wasn't looking for fireworks or fairy tales. No, sir. He wanted professionalism, cooperation, someone who could read a script and shake a few hands convincingly. That's all. Or so he told himself. Because admitting you crave something more, that would mean facing a truth too vulnerable to touch. And yet, deep down, he couldn't shake the irony. The same man who orchestrated entire companies was now outsourcing a personal connection. There was something quietly tragic about that, but also strangely liberating. In a world where appearances held power, this little charade was his way of regaining control. A fake wife at a real party, a fictional marriage at a golden anniversary. Sounded harmless enough until it didn't. Funny how the heart can play tricks on the mind, right? As he reviewed profiles late into the night, one photo caught his eye. Not the most polished, not the most radiant, but something in the smile. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for a moment, Nathan paused. That was the first sign that maybe this emotional story was about to unravel into something more than just damage control. Lena Morales hadn't planned on surviving this way. She was the kind of woman who scribbled hope into sketchbooks and believed books could heal broken parts of people. But her world had grown quiet lately, too quiet. The bell above her bookstore door rang less and less. The invoices stacked higher, and the eviction notice, fluttering on her window like an unwanted bookmark, reminded her that even the most touching stories sometimes end mid-sentence. She used to believe resilience was enough, that if you worked hard, stayed kind, and dreamed big, the world would meet you halfway. But rent hikes and lonely afternoons had a way of breaking that belief into little pieces. Lena didn't cry when the final notice arrived. She stared at it, biting her lip, wondering what it would feel like to let go of everything she'd built. Her bookstore wasn't just shelves and sales. It was her sanctuary, her identity, her emotional story etched into wood and ink. When the agency's offer came, it didn't feel like opportunity. It felt like insult wrapped in a paycheck. $1,500 to pretend to be someone's wife for a weekend. She almost laughed, almost deleted the message. But desperation doesn't care about pride, and Lena was running out of lifelines. So she read the terms again. Just a weekend. A script. No real risk, just pretend. And pretend, well, she'd done that before. In public, in front of family, hiding how close she was to giving up. Still, something about saying yes unsettled her. This wasn't like working a second job or selling a few drawings online. This was stepping into someone else's emotional story, with her real life still unraveling in the background. But maybe that's what made it feel oddly fitting. Maybe the world had become so chaotic, pretending to be someone else was the only way to hold on to pieces of who she used to be. Or maybe she just didn't want to feel invisible anymore. The interview was clinical. Cold lighting, tight smiles, questions she wasn't sure how to answer. How did you two meet? What do you love most about your husband? Lena spoke like she was auditioning for a play she hadn't read. And yet, each word from the script pulled memories she hadn't touched in years. Memories of warmth, of connection, of feeling seen. It wasn't the questions that unnerved her. It was how much she wanted to answer them like they were true. She signed a contract with trembling fingers. Not for the money, but for the space to breathe. For one weekend, she wouldn't be the woman packing her life into boxes. She'd be a wife, a guest, someone welcomed into a family celebration. There was guilt, sure, but there was also hope. A flicker of curiosity that maybe, just maybe, stepping into a fake world could remind her of the real dreams she'd buried. The one she still couldn't bring herself to let go of. So she packed lightly. Just essentials in her sketch pad, worn at the corners, filled with stories she never had the courage to publish. She zipped her bag slowly, paused by the window, and whispered a quiet prayer. Not for success, not even for happiness, just for a chance to stop falling. And as the train pulled away from the city, Lena looked out, not knowing that her own real story was already turning the page. Nathan wasn't sure what he expected when she arrived, but it definitely wasn't the warm presence that entered his home that afternoon. Lena stood at the door, her suitcase in hand, a cautious smile tugging at her lips. It wasn't flirtatious or forced. It was nervous, like she was trying to hold something fragile together. And Nathan, ever the composed CEO, found himself frozen for a second. Not out of attraction, out of unfamiliarity. It had been a while since someone looked at him without expectations. Their first handshake was awkward in the most human way. Neither of them tried too hard. That's what made it real. Lena cracked a quiet joke about meeting her husband, and to his surprise, Nathan actually laughed. Not the rehearsed laugh he used in meetings. A genuine one that snuck out before he could stop it. For a moment, he forgot she was there because of a contract. It felt more like fate nudging two strangers together under the disguise of convenience. As they sat to review their backstory, the conversation strayed. They were supposed to memorize how they met at a charity gala. Instead, they ended up talking about favorite movies, failed vacations, and the weirdest thing they'd ever eaten. The dialogue flowed too smoothly, the pauses too comfortable. It was supposed to be rehearsal, but somehow it became connection. And while neither admitted it out loud, they both felt something tugging beneath the surface, a flicker of something unnamed. Nathan noticed things he hadn't planned to. The ink stains on Lena's fingers, the way she tucked her hair when she was thinking. She wasn't polished like the women he usually dated. She was honest in a way that made him lower his guard. Just a little. And Lena? She didn't see a CEO. She saw a man who looked tired in the quiet, who asked about her art like it actually mattered. And for a woman used to being overlooked, that meant more than she let on. They practiced smiling for imaginary cameras, practiced holding hands, and somewhere between one laugh and the next, Lena's thumb brushed over his knuckle without thinking. Nathan didn't pull away. He didn't even flinch. Their touch lingered. It wasn't electric. It wasn't cinematic, but it was tender, familiar. And for two people used to performing, that tenderness was more intimate than anything scripted. The hours slipped by unnoticed. Neither of them kept checking the clock. They were too lost in the rhythm of conversation, too surprised at how easy it felt. Nathan wasn't used to ease. He was used to managing, fixing, controlling. But with Lena, there was nothing to fix. There was just presence. And Lena, who had braced herself for discomfort, felt oddly at home. Like maybe she was stepping into an emotional story that already knew her shape. By the time they rehearsed their first How We Met scene, it felt less like an act and more like a memory. They weren't just preparing for the anniversary gala. They were learning how to see each other, layer by quiet layer. And though neither dared to say it aloud, something in that room had shifted. The pretending was beginning to feel a little too real. The gala wasn't just elegant, it was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers glowed like frozen stardust, and a string quartet played softly in the corner as guests floated in like a dream. Nathan and Lena entered hand in hand, all smiles and quiet poise. At first glance, they looked like every other couple there, charming, comfortable, in sync. But inside, both hearts pounded with the unspoken. They were playing a role, yes. But why did it feel so, right? As they greeted relatives and posed for photos, Lena found herself slipping effortlessly into the rhythm of family life. Nathan's grandmother hugged her tight, whispering, "You finally found someone gentle." That one sentence hit harder than either expected. Nathan smiled, but his chest tightened. It wasn't guilt. Not exactly. It was longing. For what? He wasn't entirely sure. Maybe for the simplicity of truth, or maybe for the comfort that only comes when the emotional story stops feeling like fiction. They danced under soft lights, their bodies close but respectful, their eyes occasionally locking. It was supposed to be performative, something for the crowd, but their hands fit naturally. Their laughter wasn't rehearsed. The pauses between words stretched longer, not out of awkwardness, but hesitation, like they were both wondering how real this all had become. Lena's dress shimmered under the lights, but it was her expression that captivated Nathan. Steady, warm, curious. Conversations came easy. Guests leaned in to ask about their first trip together or how he proposed, and they answered seamlessly. But every time they told a fake story, they added a little truth. Like how Lena loved mint tea but hated chamomile, or how Nathan got nervous before speeches. The back and forth became a dance of its own, not just performing a real story, but building one in real time. And neither wanted it to end. During dinner, Nathan caught himself watching Lena from across the table. The way she smiled at his niece, the way she remembered everyone's name. He felt proud, and that scared him. Because pride wasn't part of the deal. Neither was admiration, and definitely not the warmth swelling in his chest when she laughed. It felt dangerous. It felt beautiful. And for once, Nathan didn't want to analyze it. He just wanted to feel it. Lena, too, sensed a shift. She wasn't just playing wife anymore. She was observing a man who listened, who noticed small things, who didn't treat her like a prop. Nathan wasn't the cold executive she imagined. He was layered, quiet, thoughtful. She started wondering what his real laugh sounded like, what he looked like without the suit and the plan. And somewhere between toasts and slow dances, the emotional story they had scripted began writing itself. And yet, as the night deepened and the music softened, a new tension quietly stirred beneath all that charm. Neither of them said it out loud, but they both knew they were running out of time. This wasn't supposed to mean anything. But what if it did? What if pretending to love someone accidentally made you feel it for real? The atmosphere was almost too perfect. The string quartet played something soft and nostalgic. Laughter floated through the air like perfume. And Nathan was just beginning to believe this illusion might last a little longer. That maybe, just maybe, they could keep living inside this emotional story without consequence. But stories have a way of testing the heart, especially when the past decides it's not quite finished with you. Veronica arrived like a storm dressed in red. Her entrance was deliberate, heels clicking like a countdown, eyes sharp enough to slice through any facade. Nathan felt his spine stiffen before she even spoke. He hadn't seen her in months, and there she was, hugging him a second too long and eyeing Lena like she already knew the secret. It wasn't jealousy. It was something colder, a hunter spotting prey. And Lena? She felt it instantly in her gut. It didn't take long. Over by the dessert table, Veronica cornered Lena with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're an illustrator, right? Not exactly CEO wife material." Her voice was sugar-coated venom. Lena tried to laugh it off, but her hands trembled slightly. She didn't crack yet, but Veronica had lit a fuse. And she wasn't planning to leave without watching the explosion. It wasn't just drama. It was sabotage. And everyone knows some of the most touching stories fall apart when someone tells the wrong truth at the wrong time. When a moment came, it was swift and brutal. Veronica raised her glass, smiled to the crowd, and told the truth, cold, calculated, and loud. He paid her. She's not his wife. She's an actress. Gasps echoed across the ballroom like broken glass. Eyes turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. The illusion shattered right there under the chandeliers. Lena froze, every muscle in her body screaming to run. But Nathan held her hand, and then did something no one expected. He stepped forward, not to deny, not to spin it, but to confess. Yes, he said, I hired her. I didn't want to show up alone. Silence swallowed the room. But he kept going. But somewhere between the script and the rehearsal, I stopped pretending. His voice cracked just enough to silence even Veronica. I fell in love with her. No gimmicks, no performance, just raw, exposed truth. And that's when the emotional story took a turn even Nathan hadn't predicted. Some guests smiled softly. Others walked away. But Lena stayed rooted in place, her heart caught between betrayal and something tender. It hurt to be revealed like that. It hurt worse to realize he was telling the truth. And yet, when she looked into Nathan's eyes, she didn't see manipulation. She saw a man afraid but honest, someone willing to fall apart in public just to tell her something real. That moment didn't fix everything, but it did something more valuable. It made everything undeniably human. Still, the damage was done. The whispers lingered. The magic of the evening was gone. And even as Nathan reached for her again, Lena didn't move. Not out of anger, out of protection. Her heart, once cautious, now trembled on the edge of something new, something dangerous. Because now, the story wasn't just about deception. It was about whether a real story could be born from a broken one, and whether love could survive the truth. The morning after fell hollow. Lena didn't sleep much. The weight of it all pressed against her chest like an invisible wall. The dress she'd worn to the gala hung limply over a chair, as if it too had given up pretending. She packed quietly, folded things that no longer smelled like magic, and stepped out without a word. Not to punish Nathan, but to protect herself. After all, when a beautiful lie collapses, what's left behind feels colder than the truth ever could. Back in her bookstore, the silence felt familiar again, comforting even. No gala lights, no strangers whispering, just her, the shelves, and the creak of the floor beneath her feet. She tried to draw, but every line reminded her of him. His laugh, his sincerity, his eyes when he said, I fell in love with her. And yet, wasn't that just another line in an emotional story that had gotten out of hand? How could something fake leave a scar that felt so real? Then, one late afternoon, the bell above the door rang. She didn't look up at first. Probably a delivery or someone asking for directions. But then she saw the toolbox, then the rolled-up sleeves. And when her eyes met Nathan's, there were no suits, no speeches, just a man who showed up, not to ask for forgiveness, but to quietly fix the broken shelf by the window. He didn't speak. He just worked. And somehow, that said more than any apology ever could. Lena watched in silence. Each nail he hammered felt like a sentence unsaid. Each swipe of his sleeve, a confession. She whispered, You don't owe me anything. And he replied, soft but steady, I know, but I want to build something with you. Not save her, not buy her bookstore, just build. It wasn't grand. It wasn't cinematic, but it was the most honest moment they'd shared. A real story didn't need fireworks. It just needed choice, intention, presence. They didn't rush. Days passed. Coffee turned into shared breakfasts. Drawings turned into collaborations. Nathan learned the names of paper textures and ink brands. Lena learned the language of leadership, of steadiness, of how a man like him could still be vulnerable. They were two very different people trying to meet in the middle of a story neither of them expected to write. And the pages? They filled slowly, but beautifully. Word got out. People returned to the bookstore, not for discounts, but for the warmth that now filled the room. Some said it was one of those touching stories that only happen in movies. Others simply saw two people trying, really trying, to choose each other. There was no need to explain or impress. Their emotional story had become something steady, like the hum of a quiet morning or the comfort of a light left on in the hallway. And just like that, what began as fiction ended in truth. No spotlight, no announcement, Just two people choosing love over appearances. Because in the end, it wasn't about pretending. It was about what they were both willing to build when no one was watching. What would you do if the person who once broke your heart came back? Not with flowers, but with actions. Could you forgive? Would you even want to try? Or would you walk away, afraid that falling again means breaking twice as hard? Have you ever found something real in the middle of a lie? Do you think a relationship that starts as a performance can evolve into something genuine? Want to know? Really know? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Be honest. Be bold. This is your space too. And if this emotional story made you feel something, anything, don't let it end here. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us for the next touching stories we've got coming. Because the next one, it might feel like it was written just for you.